Hi, welcome to 3 Now, the final episode of this summer. We're here live at Palmer's Place in Grange. I'm Johnny Lombardi. Thank you for joining us here on LTTV and High School Cube. Along with me this episode about all of college football, our preview show is Tim Goldrick, Connor Onion, Aron Nelson, and Sean Murphy. Elliott Nelson will be coming in shifts and segments with Sean, so we're really excited to be here with you. We have the people eating lunch behind us, and we're just really excited to be here, Tim. And it's going to be a really awesome year of college football, and we just really want to bring the preview.
It's going to be a great year of college football, like usual, Johnny. Very excited for the season to get started. We'll see if Alabama can repeat.
Now, talking about Alabama, Aaron, you're a big Alabama fan. What do you expect from the Crimson Tide this year, going for 3 in a row?
Well, I'm not going to lie, because their schedule is pretty dang easy, I'm going to have to say they're going to go 12-1 or 11-1 or 12-0. I mean, I really can't see them losing to many teams, except for LSU. That's my key market game I got down. I know you're a big LSU fan, but that's the biggest game of the year.
We're going to start off with the Coaches Top 25 preseason poll, and we're just going to talk about our problems with it. If you agree, disagree. I think Alabama, Connor, the unanimous number 1. Was there anything that you saw that you would have changed?
No, I definitely think they're the number 1 team in the nation right now until somebody dethrones them. And, I mean, they went 13-1, 3 out of the last 4 national championships. They have the number 1 recruiting class again. They have a bunch of key pieces coming back. They have T.J. Yeldon, who backed up Eddie Lacy, who's sort of a running back by committee last year with Eddie Lacy. He's probably just as good as Eddie Lacy. And then Amari Cooper and A.J. McCarron are also coming back on the offensive side of the ball. So they're going to have a lethal offense. And, again, they had the top defense in the nation last year, too, and they have a bunch of guys coming back. So I absolutely agree with it.
I just want to know what 3 coaches thought Ohio State was the best team in the nation. That just baffles me.
Probably Urban Meyer.
I don't think Urban Meyer's not dumb enough.
Brady Hoke? Brady Hoke? You think Brady Hoke's?
I don't know. I doubt Brady Hoke would be one of them. But, I mean, isn't that crazy, Tim?
I think it's ridiculous, especially when you look at Alabama's secondary. They have Deion Blue. They have Vinny Sunseri, however you say his name. And, of course, Clinton Dix. Is going to be laughing his way all the way to the national championship this year.
I had one issue with this, Aaron. I know you're wearing Ohio State. I put Oregon ahead of Ohio State. Number 2, Oregon, I had them. Ohio State is number 2 right now, but I had Oregon over them just because Marcus Mariota's coming back. Chip Kelly left, but the new coach for Oregon was in their system for years, so it's not going to be a huge change for the Ducks.
The offense will still be high-powered.
What is your argument for Ohio State being number 2 over Oregon?
Well, you know what? Okay, I know, Hyde is obviously gone for the entire season. And I'm not sure if that factors into their ranking here. Did this come out before?
I think it might have come out after.
Okay,
after. Definitely
they
after.
Still kept him at number 2. That surprised me. I know I love Ohio State. I would love him to be number 2. But I would, because Hyde's gone, he was a 1,000-yard, running back and big red zone touchdown guy. I mean, I would move him down a couple ranks, to be honest.
Ohio State last year barely beat, we had a little windy here, barely beat Central Florida, only beat an average California team by a touchdown, beat UAB by 14, only beat Indiana by 3, gave up 49 points to the Hoosiers, and then had to go to overtime to beat Purdue. Oregon beat Arizona by 49, Washington State by 25, Washington by 30, Arizona State by 20 on the road, Cal by 42, and then Kansas State by 20 in the bowl game.
I think
Oregon is just explosive on offense. They always find a way to lose that one game, Connor, but
I think there could be a little bit of an adjustment period just with the new coach coming in, and there's the stability at Ohio State after going 12-0 last year with Urban Meyer being there a year with Braxton Miller, and he racked up, I think, over 3,300 yards last year. So, I mean, you could flip-flop these guys back and forth at 2, 3, 4 with Stanford right down there too. So
they're both top 5 teams.
Exactly.
Regardless.
I think Oregon, that early matchup against Tennessee, is going to be a huge game to test where they're at early in the season. Now, Sean, what do you think of South Carolina? Do you think they're a top 10 team? I know you have some opinions about Jadeveon Clowney.
I believe they are a top 10 team. Clowney is an awesome player. They got questions at quarterback, and I think they'll be exposed early because the last couple of years they've had a lot of quarterbacks like to cruise outside the pocket, and that's where you run into a lot of trouble.
Lots of guys with a lot of hair. They love the quarterbacks love the flow. Dylan Thompson and I know Connor Shaw loves to grow that hair out, and they had that guy Garcia who loved to grow the hair out. So
he got in a little bit of legal trouble, but I think this year they're solid.
Bunch of thugs.
I don't think they're quite as quality as people are saying. I think Jadeveon Clowney is kind of overhyped a little bit. That hit was kind of a
Tim has something to say about that. Do you think South Carolina's overrated?
We'll talk about the Heisman watch later.
You know what? I don't think South Carolina is overrated. I think the old ball coach is overrated, to be honest with me. The old ball coach hasn't really done much since he got to South Carolina. Sure, he beat Michigan last year, but I mean, they barely snuck that one out, and Michigan wasn't too good last year.
Yeah. They also lost at LSU and at Florida when they were undefeated and had a chance to possibly win the SEC East. I would have put Georgia. We put Georgia over Stanford in our poll. I don't know. Georgia's offense is high-powered, but that defense is going to give up so many points.
This is another team that you can really flip-flop back and forth anywhere in the top 5. Really, they've got a good 1-2 punch with Stephen Gurley at running back, and obviously Aaron Murray's been there for a long time. So I mean, I see them going back to the SEC championship game, possibly challenging Alabama. So
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't argue with them being in the top 5.
I agree. That was a good game last year. Alabama and Georgia came out in the last possible minute.
4 yards short, and
4 yards short.
Georgia's going to the national championship. So,
With all the recent troubles with Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M, is that? I mean, it's obviously not going to affect their coach's preseason poll, but is that going to affect their possible AP poll going into the first week, or is it going to affect their performance if he's in or out? Just the distractions.
It shouldn't. I don't think the distractions were very big. I think a lot of them were unwarranted. I mean, he's a college kid. He's going to make mistakes, obviously. Just because nowadays everything's taken pictures of, you get cameras everywhere. Who knows what guys were doing in the 60s, 70s like that. So I think a lot of it was unwarranted, but of course with the autograph signings now,
That's big.
Hopefully he doesn't get suspended, because that's going to be bad for college football. It's going to be bad for the NCAA. We need to see Johnny football out there.
what does this guy need more money for, though? Really,
Exactly.
I mean, he comes from
Family's rich.
reports. Right, his family's rich, and I don't know. The spotlight should be enough for him if his family's well off. And
He
I just think.
had courtside tickets to Heat Spurs game 1, 15K
Right.
a ticket.
Right, maybe he sold an autograph and got into the gates, but who knows?
You heard his dad is pushing. He was pissed that the director got a huge raise, and he felt like he wasn't protecting his son, even though he wasn't getting a cut of it. So he felt like he was taking advantage of his son. So maybe there's a little family pressure there.
I can understand how college football players get upset that the NCAA is making revenue off of them, but I don't know. I'm
not there to make money.
Right. I'm what they call a purist, I guess. I just like how college is playing for the love of the game, and then the NFL is where you make your money. So
Exactly.
David Shaw, Stanford's coach, actually said, they're at college to learn how to make money, not to make money while they're there. So
Exactly.
I definitely agreed with that.
And have you ever seen an Ohio State player who's malnutritioned? I mean, these guys are getting fed, they're getting housing and a free education, especially if they're at a great school like Stanford or Northwestern.
Right.
Awesome.
Matthew Harris actually sent me a picture of one of their training tables while he was at training camp, and they're just piles of food. So I mean, they're taking good care of him.
Get that food.
Absolutely. And real quick before we go to our first break, what do we think about Louisville? I mean, this is a team with a lot of hype coming in off the Sugar Bowl win against Florida. They really have probably the biggest cupcake schedule in the nation, Tim.
Oh, I love Teddy Bridgewater.
I love Teddy Bridgewater.
I
I don't
think
know
he's
if
the
I like
Heisman
Louisville.
front runner right now. And I think Louisville has a chance to run the table this year, but once they get to a bowl game and see some real competition, it's going to be difficult for them. But I guess what we could take out of last year is we shouldn't really doubt them. They handled Florida pretty well.
They did. Yeah.
But did Florida underestimate Louisville? We'll get to that question when we return here on 3 and Out, live from Palmer's Place. We'll be right back. Live from Palmer's Place in the Grange, Johnny Lombardi alongside Tim Goldrick, Connor Onion, Aron Nelson, and now Elliott Nelson is with us. You're not seeing double, they are twins. But he's joining us for this segment, switching out with Sean Murphy. But we're going to go back to our top 25 discussion. And we left off, was Louisville's win against Florida just a factor of Florida not preparing, or was I watched that game and Louisville was pretty dominant.
Well, go ahead.
Go
Tay,
ahead,
you want
go
to take? I think Teddy Bridgewater really broke out in this game, and he showed why he's going to be a Heisman candidate in 2013. But on Florida's side of the ball, Jeff Driscoll definitely needs to prove that he's going to be consistent this year if they have any shot in SEC championship or a BCS bowl game. And I mean, they have the defense to compete in the SEC. It just comes down to consistent play from the quarterback.
Yeah, can they score? They scored only 14 points against Missouri in the Swamp. So, I mean, that's trouble on offense for Florida.
It definitely is, and I haven't bought into the Will Muschamp phase of Florida yet.
Yeah.
I think he's great on the defensive side, but his offense still remains to be seen.
His body language on the sidelines is very entertaining. I don't know how he is as a coach, but I saw him chew out one of his players one time on the sideline in the Georgia game last year. I paused my DVR a couple times just to look at some of his facial expressions.
Now, a team that went to the national title last year and got blown out of South Beach, what are we looking at Notre Dame? They were ranked 11th in the preseason poll. Do you think that's warranted, or are they a little overrated? They don't have Everett Golson anymore.
They got Puff Arm Reese instead. I think it's way, way too low for them. They should be 22, 23.
Although I think Golson's going to improve this year.
He's out.
Oh, he's out? Oh,
yeah,
no.
He got kicked out of school.
Oh, it's Reese. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's going to be Reese again. Okay, yeah. Well, I think right now, 11's not bad because Notre Dame's defense was pretty good last year. Although Alabama's offense was way too consistent, and it made Notre Dame look like a really, really bad defensive team. But overall, Notre Dame had strong defense the entire year and solid play from the quarterback. But now it's Reese, so it's kind of up in the air a little bit. I feel like it's going to be a little shaky in offense this year.
There was a quarterback controversy between those two last year. They weren't really sure, like, if they were switching off.
It was more than one guy. It was more than one or two guys, too.
It wasn't you're starting this whole game. It was you'll come out and maybe he'll come
right.
in.
There was one game where Reese actually won the game, and Golson played most of the game. I remember. I don't remember who it was against, but Reese won the game. He threw a touchdown at the end.
They also had talks about Gunnar Kiel coming in and Hendricks, the guy that they really just brought him in to run the ball, but there was sort of a quarterback shuffle going on there.
But I think I think 11 is a little high. I mean, their defense is still outstanding.
They have a lot of talent, but they lose
have
the
plenty of talent. Taylor's gone, but their offense, I have no idea what it's going to look like.
Their defense should be fine. Their defensive line with Lewis Nix and Stephon Tuitt, those are two of the best defensive linemen in the nation, and they also had a couple linebackers. I know you can't replace a guy like Monte Teo, who was a Heisman finalist, but they had some guys get some experience, which was good. So I think they'll be fine on defense. It's just a question of whether Tommy Rees has the goods to deliver.
If their offense is consistent enough, they won't put up 14. They got to put 25, 24, and they're not going to play like the easiest teams in the world.
Yeah, they have a brutal schedule.
They do.
The schedule is pretty good.
When you're an independent team, though, you have to schedule
They beat
those.
Stanford last year somehow. I don't know.
But they're going to Palo Alto this
That
year.
was controversial too. That overtime game.
But one thing about Tommy Rees is Rees has the juice. He gets it done in clutch situations. He's good there, but we'll see how he fares when a defense has all four quarters to catch up to him.
So from the 10 to 20 range in the preseason poll, are there any teams that you look at from 10 to 20 that could possibly come out and surprise some people?
Texas. I look at Texas definitely as probably winning the Big 12. They return 19 starters. They return their quarterback, running back, and top two receivers, which is huge, and they have a very favorable schedule. They only travel to Iowa State, TCU, West Virginia, and Baylor. If you look at that in a Big 12 conference, that is great for them.
They always
it
get
sets
OU
up
at
great.
neutral site, too.
Yeah, Oklahoma State will be the key game for them. If they can get by Oklahoma State, I look at Texas as being a possible national championship team.
I look at a team in the Big Ten, and I look at Nebraska, and then I look at their schedule. They don't play Ohio State, and they don't play Wisconsin, and they have a great dual threat quarterback in Taylor Martinez, and Amir Abdullah should step in at running back, and putting points up on the board should be no problem for them. My only concern with them, the only reason they wouldn't make the Big Ten championship is if their defense doesn't hold up. They lost all three of their starting linebackers, so they're going to put points up the board. Look for a lot of shootouts from Nebraska.
They do get to host UCLA, but they have to go to the Big House, I believe. So that's two tough games. I think they host Northwestern as well.
Yeah, they do miss out on Wisconsin and Ohio State.
That's the biggest part of that too. But I think a slightly favorable schedule. I like Nebraska. I like their offense.
I actually like Florida State. I mean, I know E.J. Manuel is gone, but that the redshirt freshman,
James Winston, yeah,
quarterback is supposed to be better than E.J. Manuel. Manuel started for 4 years. I mean, this guy might. I mean, look at Manziel as a freshman. He did really well. And Florida State, I mean, they're a great team, but. Their quarterback. I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about him.
They'll be great defensively too. I think they have one of the best defenses in the country with Christian Jones and LaMarcus Joyner at safety.
You can't underestimate them ever.
Right. They were they were fearless flying to the ball last year. We saw that in the bowl game against Northern. I know that's different competition, but they definitely have a high flying defense.
They have to travel to Gainesville and to Clemson, and those are two brutal roads for Florida State, especially with a young quarterback in those environments.
Playing at Florida is always tough, no matter what.
It'll be interesting to see if they can slow down Taj Boyd. He had over 3,000 yards passing last year, 36 touchdowns. So
and Clemson competed in that game. That game in Tallahassee. Clemson was right there the whole game.
We'll see if Joyner has a little something for Taj Boyd.
Elliott, who are you looking at the 10-20 range?
I'm looking at, surprisingly, Northwestern. Last year, they were in a lot of games. They choked a few games really, really badly.
Penn State was one of those games.
They blew a huge lead in the fourth quarter.
At home.
Really
At home.
Yeah. And it was at home, too, yeah. But I think Northwestern's going to win, I think, 7 or 8 games minimum.
I
think they're going to pull out a few games this year. They're not going to choke as bad as last year.
They'll make the close games.
Pat Fitzgerald's a great coach. I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to get something in their heads so they don't choke.
Yeah, they experimented a little bit last year with Trevor Simeon and Kane Coulter as sort of the 1-2 punch, 1 and 1A, I guess they're calling them. But with more, Coulter's a senior now, Simeon's a junior, so they've been playing together for a couple years now, and they know how to sort of rotate them in. And then they have Vendrick Mark, the do-it-all back in the backfield there, so they could have a big year in the Big Ten, maybe break out.
I can think of three plays in 3 of those games that they lost last year. That if they made it, they would have won. That 3 wins to their resume last year would have put them in a way higher bowl.
I think a team to look out for is Oklahoma State. They had 3 quarterbacks last year gain 1,000 yards. 3 quarterbacks each gain 1,000 yards. They're getting them all back this year, I believe. I like Oklahoma State. They can start with Mississippi State at home. If they win that game, I think that game could launch them to be a very, very competitive team in the Big Ten. They have to travel to the Big 12. They have to travel to Austin, as you said, Tim. That's going to be a tough trip. But they get Oklahoma at home. I think it's a huge game in Stillwater.
The big test will be the last 3 weeks of the season. They go to Texas, and then you said they have Oklahoma at home. So, I think they can cruise through the early part of their schedule, but we'll find out if they're for real come week 10 and week 12.
Yeah. We're going to take a break here on 3 and Out, live from Palmer's Place. We'll be right back after this commercial break. To teams we think are overrated or underrated. And I'll start with you, Tim. Who do you have as an overrated or underrated teams in college football going into this?
Well, Johnny, I've been itching to talk about this underrated team. Connor, you played for LT football. What would happen if Pat Kelly was your starting quarterback for the last 6 games of the year?
We'd be in trouble.
That's what Maryland basically went through.
Well, I'll tell you what though, Pat Kelly did play for the Scorpions baseball team, so I hear he's got an arm.
Maybe.
So we might have survived.
But true freshman linebacker Sean Petty was playing quarterback for Maryland the last 6 games of the year. They went through 5 quarterbacks. Torn ACLs, broken arms, they were all gone, which speaks to the offensive line, of course. Yeah, but they're going to be the most improved this year. They have C.J. Brown coming back. It's actually his 6th year, so we're in 8th grade when he was still playing, which is unbelievable to think about. But they started out 4-2 last year when they had a real quarterback. They ended 4-8. So I think Maryland will be very good this year, and look for them to make some noise in the ACC.
I'll stay in the ACC. I like North Carolina. They're in a weak ACC, and they return quarterback Brian Renner, and they don't play Florida State and Clemson. So
that's a huge benefit.
They play South Carolina the first week of the season, and after that it's those ACC cupcakes the rest of the time.
The all cupcake conference, I like to call it. Elliott?
I believe you guys have forgotten about 13th ranked LSU. I don't see why they're ranked 13th. They are completely underrated right now. And see, the thing is, they have an amazing defense, and their defense is pretty much how they're going to win games this year. Like they can win under any circumstance at home too, just with their defense too. And their offense is going to be way improved this year because Menberg is coming back for his 2nd year. But easily, like their defense alone and ability to win under any circumstance at home should put them in the top 10 preseason already. Now I believe 13 is way too low. I would say at least 8.
Underrated.
I did not pay him to say that, by the way. I did not pay him.
You might have.
I agree with that.
They did lose some key guys on defense. They lost Mingo and Montgomery, and
Jeremy Hill's out for a few games this year too. But other than that, though, I believe
The offense is going to be crazy.
yeah, I think they're only going to lose to Alabama and Georgia, and those 2 teams are in the top 5.
They did recruit well, if I'm not mistaken. And the only concern with them is they may have 2 freshmen starting cornerbacks.
That's
so
right. The secondary is going to be subject for the Tigers this year, but they did recruit Gerald Brazil, who was the 2nd fastest track runner in the nation.
going against
He's
the
the next Trenton
going against the passing attacks of Texas A&M and then Alabama with Amani Cooper. I mean, it could be trouble with 2 freshman corners that are inexperienced, but I think they'll be all right.
I actually listed a couple of underrated teams, and LSU, which he said, but I'm going to go with UCLA. I remember I didn't know much about him last year. I mean, I didn't find out who the coach was until halfway through the season. I didn't really pay attention to him.
Former NFL guy, yeah.
Yeah, but when you look at actually how they played and how they won games, they were not too shabby at all. They were I feel like at the end of the year, they were starting to play their best football, and I think they're going to continue to do that this year. And they're ranked only 21st here. I think they should be at least 15, 14, but 21st, because, okay, in my opinion, I think the last 5 are just sort of thrown in there in the top 25. Like, you can just pick any team. Like it's close. Like, how do you know?
A lot of people forget though that UCLA was a couple points away from going to the Rose Bowl. They played Stanford in the Pac-12 championship.
They're not bad. They're really not that bad. No one talks
They returned their quarterback too.
Right, Brett Huntley, and that was a 1-score game. So I mean,
they're not a bad football team.
They could, all the teams. Yeah, they could turn the corner this year. I agree.
I feel like everyone just thinks basketball when you hear UCLA, but really, football is really coming around lately. So,
Tim, what about an overrated team this year that you're looking at?
Well, I look at Florida as overrated, and I look at them as overrated every year. I'm not a believer in just Jeff Driscoll. I'm not a believer in Will Muschamp. And if you look at their schedule, they have to go to LSU, to Georgia, to South Carolina, to Miami.
They get Georgia on neutral in Jackson.
Neutral, yeah. So that's 4 potential losses, and you're going to tell me that they're in the top 15? I don't think so.
Yeah. We talked about Notre Dame a little bit, and I think we all agreed that they were a little overrated. Another team I don't think they're overrated. I don't think they're going to stick in the top 5 is Stanford. You look at their schedule, and you go week 7, week 8, week 9, and week 10. You're looking at home versus UCLA, at Oregon State, versus Oregon, and then at USC, all bang, 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 bang. So I think that stretch right there could take a toll on them, and they could see the record slip and maybe have 2 or 3 losses at the end of that stretch.
Either of you guys have an overrated team you're looking at?
Well, I got Florida State, even though they're 12 and they lost E.J. Manuel. But I mean, they have a really, really, really easy schedule. It's 64th easy schedule, and I feel like that's just way too easy for a team like that. And since they're having a redshirt freshman as their quarterback, I feel like 12 already is kind of a little too high. I feel like they should start. I mean, it's Florida State, so. And they had a really good season last year, so they should stay, I'd say, ranked, but I'd say maybe like 20th.
I think they brought in like the number 8 recruiting class, which isn't too bad either. So
I can check that for you. Number 9 recruiting class according to Yahoo. So
off the top of my head, I'm
there
like 8 or 9. I'm trying to remember it. Let's see, we're talking about overrated teams. Well, you brought up Oregon State. I actually had them as one of my underrated. So when he brought up
Stanford.
When he brought them up, I said, "Oh yeah, Oregon State. They're not too bad. You love Oregon State. You like
Beavers.
Beavers. You love the Beavers. But my overrated team, okay, Wisconsin. I don't think they should be ranked. I don't. They're 23rd. I mean, what, they 7-5 last year? The only reason they were even in the Rose Bowl is because the 2 teams in front of them were ineligible.
Yeah.
And
they caught Nebraska sleeping.
They caught Nebraska. Yeah, really. Nebraska should have won the game. They just didn't show up. Wisconsin, they're not. They lost Monty Ball, and he was a huge running back for 4 years.
They lost their coach, which I think is the biggest.
Brad Bielema, yeah.
They lost their coach. I don't see them.
The good news for them is though that they had James White backing up Monty Ball, and he racked up 800 yards as a backup. So I mean, once he's the every down back this year, he could do some damage in the Big Ten. And
I just feel like losing your coach, you lost your 4-year running back, Monty Ball. I don't know.
I do think this will be probably a typical Wisconsin team. They're gonna pound the ball. They have a little bit of a quarterback controversy going on right now.
NCAA in like rushing, or top 5 at least. They run the ball like no other.
Jared Abramaitis is coming back at wide receiver, so they do have some key pieces coming back, but I do think they're a little bit overrated, definitely.
We'll take a look at some of the easiest and hardest schedules in the nation. I'm looking at one of the easiest ones, Alabama Crimson Tide. For a two-time national champion, this is an absolute cupcake. They avoid Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. Again.
For the second
year in a row.
Best teams in the SEC.
And they get byes before they play Texas A&M and LSU.
Texas A&M's the same way. They missed Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida
A&M
as
is
well.
also on my list.
I always get a laugh out of it when you bring up this because
It's infuriating because LSU has to go at Georgia and play Florida every year.
with no bias.
Yeah. With not a bye before either of the games.
I mean, there's so many teams in the SEC, obviously, that can't play each other, and they're going to be teams that miss out on playing some of the top-tier teams. But South Carolina also, they don't play Alabama or LSU, who are possibly two of the top teams in the SEC.
They don't get A&M either.
Yeah.
There's plenty of teams in the SEC that can make cases. Like you could take the number 6 SEC team and throw them in the ACC, and they'll probably be a 2.
They dominate.
Yeah.
Going back to Wisconsin a little bit, though, they don't play Nebraska, Michigan, or Michigan State, which is
I had that somewhere in here.
so. I mean, that could be an argument for keeping them in the top 25, just because they could boost their record a little bit just because of their soft schedule.
If they go like what?
They also get Northwestern.
It might not be a true 10-4 if they don't play their good teams in their conference.
I look at NC State from the ACC with an easy schedule. They have Louisiana Tech, Richmond, Central Michigan, and Eastern Carolina as their non-conference schedule. That's 4 easy wins, 2 away from being bowl eligible. You need to win 2 games in the ACC to be bowl eligible. Think about that.
That's wow.
I also had Louisville, obviously. They're in the former Big East, the American Athletic Conference, I believe. It's an absolute cupcake. There's no true road test. If you count Kentucky as a road test, which I absolutely do not. That's their toughest. That's their toughest game. It's their worst SEC team. It's just terrible. So Louisville's going to go 12-0, but I would not put them in the national title game at all. You guys, anyone? Cupcake schedules, hardest schedules. I'm looking.
Louisville. Yeah, they really are not going to be tested, and I mean they play Houston and they play Cincinnati, who has a good track record back when Chip Kelly was there. So they're getting some pieces back. Cincinnati could challenge Louisville if they fall asleep. That's the danger with Louisville. They could take some of these teams too lightly. They're not playing a single top 25 team. So I mean they could slip up and have a loss to a team that they shouldn't lose to if they're not careful.
Okay. Alabama. Really easy schedule in the SEC. Their 14th easy schedule out of the 14 teams, and they're number 1 team in the country. Man, that's
just a recipe for
that's
going
basically
12.
handing them. That's like hey, Nick Saban, here is the trophy. You can look at it right now. That's basically what they're doing. The committee's doing to Alabama because if you're the number 1 team in the country and you have the easy schedule in your own conference, the SEC especially, one of the toughest conference out of all the conferences. I mean, that's not fair.
Look at Georgia as one of the hardest. They start the season at number 8 Clemson in Death Valley. The second game is versus South Carolina. They get that at home. Then they get North Texas, who is not awful. He's not an awful non-conference game, but it's definitely a non-conference. And then they have to go versus LSU at home, and then at Tennessee and Neyland, which is harder than people think. Georgia could be 1-4 through 5 weeks.
They get Florida.
And then at Vandy.
They go to the swamp in
Vandy's gonna be
November,
pretty
so I don't know. Georgia has a tough road ahead of them too.
Georgia's first 6-7 games, Tim, are just brutal.
You know what? I'm a believer in Mark Richt, though, in the early part of the season. He's shown that he can get through the first 7-8 weeks pretty much unfazed.
The opposite of Tom Coughlin.
And then once you get to, week 9, 10, 11, 12, SEC championship, that's when you stop believing in Mark Richt.
Absolutely. We'll be right back here in 3 and Out, live at Palmer's Place. We'll have back in a couple minutes.